All right, everyone. The Atlantic put out an interesting story the other day, and by interesting, I mean really, really dumb, really foolish, in which they declare, well, climate denial, ultimately, it's like kind of racist and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, no, people who are proponents, and I'm not going to have a debate over, well, climate change is real, climate change isn't real, it's man made, it's not made, it doesn't matter. The proponents of climate change as being real and as being something to combat swiftly. The proposals they specifically have made are the only racist proposals that have been made. Let me explain. First, you've got the not in my backyard element. They're like, well, we've got to clear up these factories, fucking get rid of coal and everything. That doesn't stop those things from occurring. The heavy industry moving from the United States, where did it all go? It went to China, it went to India and other parts, mainly of Southeast Asia. Now it's going to East Africa. The Chinese are importing it themselves personally. That heavy industry is much less regulated than it is here, which is why it exists there. It's much more polluting. You're essentially saying, well, as long as some little American kids don't get bone cancer from being next to the thorium processing plant or whatever, it doesn't matter if 100,000 Chinese kids live in squalor and dirt-floored fucking huts picking through garbage in order to take the e-waste and extract the gold and silver and shit from it. We don't care about these people. It's out of sight, out of mind. Secondly, carbon credits and things of that nature. Totally ludicrous. It's going to affect the bottom line of some of the lower level workers in the Western world, force jobs into other countries where people often are enslaved. You know, like Apple likes to enslave children in third world countries. Yeah, they built this beautiful campus here that looks like a giant anal ring, honestly, covered in solar, and you got little trees and sofas and comfy beanbag chairs for all of the easily triggered folks so that they have their little miniature safe space while they work. They've even developed horse blinders for these people so that they can live in a cubicle-less environment, still focus on their work like the thought slaves that they are. It is dystopian, but they don't seem to care because, you know, they're mind slaves. But it doesn't, that comes at the expense of a bunch of third worlders. You do realize that. It's like when people talk about nuclear, oh, we want the nuclear plant. By the way, still not in our backyard. 10 miles from here, maybe. Where do you think that uranium actually comes from? Where do you think that nuclear material comes from? Strip mines in Australia, strip mines in the southwest US, parts of Africa, strip mines. Your diamond, all of these wonderful luxuries that Silicon Valley purchases. But anyway, back to the concept of climate denial. I've talked to people who think climate change is a myth. Mostly they're motivated by religion. Honestly, they say, well, no, the climate change isn't a problem. God's going to destroy the world anyway. It doesn't matter. Some of these people are black or Hispanic or whatever. They're not all white. What the fuck does it have to do with race? Like Christianity is a race or something. That's another lie they've been trying to feed people lately, by the way. Christianity is different from all the others because it's like a white Western religion. It's like, it comes from the Middle East. Its main, starting point was a Jewish man, but, who cares? It's really funny. You look at it like that. It's a really interesting topic in and of itself. Climate change is interesting too. Now, what is my opinion? And I've made this clear before. I do believe the climate is changing. I do not believe it is entirely driven by mankind. I believe part of it at least is natural processes. Do I think it can be changed? Possibly, if the man-made component of it could be changed. The problem is the draconian steps you'd need to take in order to do that if you believe climate change is man-made. It began at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. There's a hell of a lot more industry and a hell of a lot more people and everything else in this world than there was then. You'd probably have to kill off a good 90% of the world's population just to get to the point where you could revert to lighter industries and preferably very green ones just in order to balance things out. You wouldn't have to go carbon neutral. The world would have to go carbon negative. It doesn't matter what the US does. That industry will just move to China or India anyway, where the rivers light on fire, where the soil is so heavily contaminated. The Chinese government that has been reluctant to engage in any form of environmentalism for a half a fucking century has just decided to plant like 1 billion trees in the country. Like, hey, we got to do something. The smog level is too high. There's too much contamination. Maybe we should start thinking about continuing to have a country past this century. Okay, we'll plant 1 billion trees. Well, you could have just left them standing in the first place, but that's just an odd opinion I happen to have as someone who believes in actually saving the world. And here's the other thing. I remember like in the 90s, or even the early 2000s, a big focus within ecological studies / anthropology sort of meshed together. I studied both. I was interested at the time in biological science. Plant biology was my first major. Ecology is a big component of that, and biochemistry if you go to UVM, so fuck that. Yeah, it's really fine. I didn't do well in chemistry. Did great in anthropology, though. Here's the thing. There was a big focus on conservation. There was a big focus on we need to reforest things, stop desertification. We need to try to protect endangered species. We need to maintain the rainforest and everything. Save the whales, clean up the trash, clean up the contamination. We need a clean world. Place you can live in, it'll be nice to live in. That affects people in a positive manner all over the world. It affects the third world the same as it does the West. When you're talking about the climate change issue, primarily it's just benefiting the upper class of the West. In all honesty, the proposals that are being made benefit the lily-white gated community more than it does the inner city ghetto. It benefits the West more than it does sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia, because it's not about saving the world. It's about money. The climate change, if you believe in man-made climate change, take a good look at what they're suggesting and ask if it's going to solve any problem. It's not going to solve any problem except the rich will get richer, which is the whole idea. They've co-opted the whole thing. They fucking co-opted the whole thing. It's like the move towards organics. Why do you think those cost more? A bunch of rich people that own corporations convince people that instead of having a backyard garden, because that's like scary and shit, you might get E. coli from your lettuce, you should just buy our up-ticketed organic products instead. Buy our $5 a can lentil soup. It's the same as the stuff you can get for 80 cents, but it makes you feel good because it's supposedly organic, and that can mean 10 different things under U.S. law anyway. That's what it's all about. So hang the issue of climate change. It doesn't matter. They're not doing anything about it anyway. Look, if man-made climate change is number one real, and number two, there's no feedback mechanism other than mankind getting involved that can stop it, you are looking at a situation in which we are already fundamentally doomed. We've already passed the tipping point. Science has already said that. We've passed the CO2 tipping point. The population of the world is unsustainably large, and even if everyone lived like a friggin' hobbit, and we lived underground and planted gardens on top of our little hobbit homes, and we packed ourselves in 5 layers deep in tenements so that we could have more forest and more cleared land and stuff, and we had, no monocultured crops. We saved the bees, we saved the elephants and everything. Our world would still not be carbon neutral. Our world would still be mounting up in the CO2 level. There'd still be trash. There'd still be contamination. There'd still be disasters causing various problems. And you'd probably have to use nuclear to do that all, and that would be a problem too. I think Jimmy Carter lowering the temperature and wearing a sweater is more noble than people rambling about an issue they don't intend to solve. Yeah, take a bike to work. Put your money where your mouth is. Get rid of your car and bike to work. Live above your workplace instead of out in your gated community suburbs, people. Don't go to college either. They use a lot of carbon footprint in those. Your college dean probably has his own private helicopter or some shit in some places. So yeah, I don't really care. It's funny to call it racist when the proposals by the proponents of climate change being real and a problem and man-made and stuff, you're proposing things that will harm the third world. You'll put more heavy industry over in some village in India where everyone will get fucking leukemia. That's about all. Peace out.